Hello, everyone. Hi, Jurgen. Hello, welcome.
Hello.
Ciao, nice to see you. How are you doing?
I am good. You too?
Excellent. Thanks for joining us, Jurgen, for the first small talk of the year. Very excited to be here with Jurgen and all of you for this new episode of this live series we've started. Now it's been 2 years. The aim of Small Talk is talk to our experts in an informal way, ask questions, and of course, listen to answers, and have the chat open for all of you who might have questions for our experts on their area of expertise. I'm really happy today to have Jurgen and to see so many of you already engaging with us in the YouTube chat. Jurgen is one of our experts and trainers. He will be back next month in Milan. We are so happy that we are organizing this again. Last time we saw Jurgen was in 2019 for his Shift Up workshop. Very cool workshop, like I'm sure this one will be as well. And I can't wait to hear more from Jurgen himself about the unFIX model. Let me just remind you, the YouTube chat is open for your questions. I see loads of you already writing. Hey, Alessandra, Eduardo, Fabio, Emanuele, all of you. Very happy to be in such good company today. Enough of my introduction. Jurgen, we are here today. As I said, we're going to welcome you back next month for the unFIX workshop. First of all, how are you? What keeping you busy lately? How is it going?
I am good. I just had my cup of coffee, so I am very happy at the moment. And over the longer term, I am also happy because the unFIX model is getting a lot of traction. I'm very happy about that. The previous workshop sold out. I look forward to being in Milan, also in Stockholm and Budapest and other places. And and we have a team with the unFIX company since 3 months, 3 months and a few days. We are now an official startup. Woohoo! And lots of ideas on the backlog. And yeah, people are very enthusiastic, including we ourselves, of course.
Exciting times then. Congratulations on this first milestone and getting to the 3 months. I'm really happy and actually curious to know more about how you are applying unFIX to your own company, of course. Last time we spoke, Alberto Brandolini also was with us. And I remember unFIX was in its very early stages. So right now it's been about 2 years, if I'm not wrong, of you doing this. So this will be part of our conversation. What we like to start with at Small Talk is always the basics. So what is unFIX? What are we exactly talking about today?
Well, I call it a pattern library, a combination of practices, some people might call them, for designing organizations. What kind of teams, what kind of business units, their specific visuals, specific colors. You see some in the background here, and they all have meaning. And I am inspired by various sources, dynamic reteaming and team topologies and other books and great people who went before me. I just use the good stuff and turn that into something that people can use to, describe how their organization is supposed to work. It's a work in progress. The model will keep extending with more patterns, and but we have a very good first version, I think.
Amazing. And you just mentioned a few of the topics and things, let's call them this way, that people have been doing in the past years, such as team topologies. And today I read your blog post about it's not the same as SAFe, saying basically we are not reinventing the wheel. It's just mixing stuff and doing something new. So this totally resonates again with what you are aiming to achieve.
Yeah.
Another part that I think it's important, and it's part of the title of the workshop, so I guess it's also part of what we are talking about, and is versatile organization. Now, I remember the conversation started around the crisis of COVID, and we need to reinvent ourselves and stuff. Would you tell us something more about what is actually versatile organization and how that applies now that crisis is, fingers crossed, over?
Well, I use that term to indicate the kind of organization that is able to change its structure all the time, that is not stuck in one form. That's why I call it unFIX, the model, to not stay fixed in the same structure with the same framework. I also say that the unFIX model is not a framework. For that reason, it is a pattern library, because the word framework in itself implies a rigid structure. That's the idea of a framework, that you have something, a frame, that holds everything together. That is not the case with the unFIX model. All the patterns are optional. It's more like Lego. You can put the blocks together in any way you want. There's not a single block mandatory in Lego. You just grab the blocks from the basket and start building. That's the kind of feeling that I want to give, and I want every organization to come up with their own design that is right in the moment, and that could now be a different one from next year. Like every thing that people make with their Lego blocks will be different from what other people have made. So I would love to have thousands of pictures of what people created with the patterns of the unFIX model, putting them together in different ways, and allow their organizations to continuously reform, restructure themselves depending on what is needed in the environment. And that's what I mean with versatile.
Yeah, and I remember one of the key points of it is, as you mentioned, being not a framework, you don't need all the bits and pieces, really. So it's depending on the context and what you need to do, you're going to have this and not that, for example.
Yep.
So I had another question, which I'm going to ask anyway. It's going to sound very silly, but I'm too curious now. Of course, we are talking about organizations that are able and want to change themselves. But so how about other type of thing? What kind of change is needed to embrace this kind of approach?
Well, I'd like the model to be as applicable as possible for as many organizations as possible. And let's be honest, a lot of models and structures that we are familiar with are created for IT businesses, whether we talk about scaled agile framework or large scale Scrum or Nexus or Scrum at scale, whatever. They're all about IT. Basically, even team topologies is very much IT focused, and that's fine. But other people also would like to know what is their place in an organization that needs to be dynamic. HR, marketing, finance, support, you name it. And there are many organizations that do not even have IT, that have outsourced all their IT, but they still do a lot of valuable work. Whether it is fire departments or hospitals or airlines or whatever. I often try to look at other kinds of industries actually to be inspired by what should the pattern library look like, just to prevent the bias towards IT, because we can be inspired actually by things that are going on in other industries that do some things much better than we do in IT. And so I want the model to be broad, not deep. If you want to go deep, then you need to have another framework like extreme programming or whatever. If you want to go deep into how do we program mix software with several software developers on one team, we're not going to cover that. That's XP practices are fine there. Why bother? But what is missing is something more holistic that any organization can use. That being said, we do have some more radical models such as holacracy, sociocracy. They are also great sources of inspiration for me, they are on the other side of the spectrum. They're too radical. They are too extreme. Most organizations wouldn't even consider beginning with holacracy or sociocracy. It is fine to use those as sort of a flag on the horizon. Like in that direction, we would like to be going, but I want a pattern library that organizations can use now that offer them step by step changes in such a direction of networked organizations instead of hierarchical structures and reteaming and people swarming to teams instead of being assigned to long-lived steady teams and so on. So this model, the unFIX model, is a bit in between, you could say. It is not as extreme as some others out there, but it also tries to stay away from being only IT dominated.
Super. So yeah, awesome. We know we are author of books and workshops, so I would say a volcano of ideas and approaches. So it's always curious for me to understand where the idea for a particular approach or something, let's say now it's a workshop and also a way to structure your team. So where does this exactly come from? Was there a moment where you said the unFIX started to take shape? I know nothing, is born from scratch, but maybe there was a moment where this actually took a shape in your head.
Right. Well, I remember it pretty well when I was thinking that it was so sad that we are still stuck with the scaled agile framework in in the world of IT and agile as being the largest and most popular quote unquote framework in the world. I hear people only complaining about it, but it sells apparently. And that to me is a rather sad state of affairs. And then the alternatives do not get much traction, to be honest. And I thought I'd like to offer my own alternative that is, as I said, not IT focused, but that covers the organization as a whole. And I was able to do that finally after years because things were coming together in my head. As I said, I read a couple of books that gave me inspiration, and I started seeing the pieces of the puzzle. The fog was clearing in my mind. When I was still working on Management 3.0 years ago, I didn't get further than every team needs to be a value unit. And I still believe that every team has to offer some value either to a customer or to another team. But I didn't know how to proceed beyond that, how to turn that into a structure that looks like a network. And I needed some more inspiration and ideas simmering in the back of my head for several years, apparently, until I was finally able to start drawing pictures with the ideas I had collected and accumulated. So and of course I knew from the start you have to show pictures. That is obvious. Once you start showing pictures, then people see themselves in a certain place. That resonates. Like, oh, okay, so I might be working over here, and okay, so the managers will be over there, etc. Only when you show things visually, then you're able to get some resonance with the audience. I noticed. So from the very beginning, I made sure that I could create visuals, that they looked fun, because that is important to me. No boring stuff. We have enough grays and blacks and everything in other models. I want a colorful model with smileys and cool terms that people have fun working with. And I think I achieved that because I get good good feedback on that.
And I remember this being like a pattern in your work when we did the one in 2019 in Milan as well. It was full of colors, lots of stickers and stickies.
I tend to use a lot of colors. Yes, maybe it's because I'm in my midlife crisis, so I need a lot of colors to feel young. But
we are with you. Well, it makes it also very nice to do the graphics and stuff, because they are all already ready and they are very colorful, as you said. So it's very nice. Now let's go to the questions that we have from the chat. So first of all, Chris. Hi, Chris. Thanks for this. So I guess, we are going a bit into the actual topic of what unFIX is about. So thanks for this, Chris. Would you please share some thoughts on why captains are needed? Is there a reason why they are not stewards?
Well, the first sentence is already not correct because nothing is needed. There's not a single pattern that is mandatory, as I said earlier. If you do not like captains, you won't have captains. That's fine. I started out with 3 roles: the captains on teams as an option, chairs on forums as an option, and then chiefs on the governance crew as an option. We are now discussing with my team to add more of these roles, inspired by other models out there, from SAFe to Scrum to Holacracy, Sociocracy, and so on. Some of them have very, very similar solutions to the same problem. We did a bit of inventory on research on that last couple of weeks. So within a month or so, we will probably going to offer the next version of what we see as potential roles. And I don't understand what stewards would be in Chris' interpretation, but we will offer some other ideas for what kind of roles people can recognize. Like, one thing that has always bothered me a bit about Scrum, for example, is that it offers the product owner and the Scrum master, and then the rest are just team members. That makes it feel that the rest are the defaults and 2 people are special. 2 people have a specific name and they have a specific responsibilities. And that in itself, in the modeling, sort of puts them aside and elevates them to another level. And you see this also happening in organizations, that the rest of the team is just team member, but we have these 2 special people that we treat differently. I don't like that, to be honest. I want every person on the team to be special, whether they are a creator making something, or they are a performer whose activities are the value, whether they are a specialist or an advisor or whatever. We have defined 12 to 15 different potential roles, and the product owner would be that'd be like a director on a movie, for example. I like that word better than product owner, actually. The director of a value, a piece of value, has the vision of what the value is supposed to offer as an experience to the consumers. That is on the director's mind of the movie. What is the experience that people should have when they watch the movie? The producer is a very different kind of person. The producer makes sure that the bottlenecks are all cleared, that things are available for the team. I sense a similarity to the Scrum Master here, removing impediments. So what they call a producer in the movie business would be maybe very similar to a Scrum Master in Scrum. So we've been doing this thinking about what could the roles be on a team, and not only have a role for the product owner, Scrum Master, or the director and the producer, but also for the others, because the actors do very important stuff on a movie. Actually, they are the best paid sometimes. So why not call them the performers? That's their job. They are the performer, and so on. So that's what I'm working on, and that's just one thing. There's a lot of other patterns that we'd like to offer in the model, and all of that should be optional. If you don't want to use any of the Lego blocks, fine, just leave them in the box if they have no value to you, because the whole point is explaining what we're doing and figuring out what the future could look like for our organization.
I think this kind of resonates with what you were saying before about every person in the team or every team giving value rather than the importance of everyone. But I'll also There's a remark by Mima. Hey Mima, thanks for writing to us. Scrum, we have POs and developers, not only two special roles. Yeah.
Well, the rest are all called developers. I mean, there's nothing special for me. That's my interpretation. Sorry. If you have 7 people and 2 have a special name and the others are all developers, that is, I find it a little bit odd, but that's just my interpretation.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, so we close with this, or we carry on, of course, and we do. So I wonder if specific roles were necessary at all. Update sounds intriguing. Yeah, cool. Okay, I wondered, yeah, because of course it was before, I guess, we started getting into the conversation. Opla. Oops. Okay, well, this was for after I clicked on the wrong button now, but of course we are here now, and it's the beauty of being live. Can you share some feedback, outcomes, anecdotes from people, organization that unFIXed successfully? As I said, we spoke with Jurgen already 2 years ago when unFIX was in its very early stage, but indeed, Enrico, I'm also with you with this question. So off we go.
Yeah. Well, the first version of the unFIX model was published 1 year and 4 months ago. That was a beta version to test the waters, and I got good feedback on that. Then I published the website on January 1st, 2022. So that's 1 year and 1 month ago. That's not long. So I do not have yet examples of organizations that found the unFIX model, started experimenting with it, reported back to us, and allowed us to create a case study out of it. That takes a bit more time, apparently. We do have case studies of organizations that have already worked like this, that I simply described with the unFIX model, with the patterns that we now have. Pipedrive is an example, Coolblue, several others on the website. They were already doing things in an unFIXed manner. They were all using the same patterns, basically, just using different terminology. That was in itself already very useful. We are now right on that moment that the first results are coming in. So the first case study was just published last week of Worldline, which is one of the largest payment providers, payment gateways in the world. They have indeed been working on their own on agile structuring of the teams, etc. They discovered the unFIX model 1 year ago, started experimenting, and are now the first to actually offer feedback to us what great next steps they have been able to make in terms of reteaming, for example. And you can find that on the website on unFIX.com. Check out this case studies, and you will find the case study of Worldline. And for them particularly, it was the reteaming that they were interested in. Because I want the model to offer a solution also to companies that do not want to be stuck, fixed in the mindset of one person, one team, dedicated full time on one team, because that is old-fashioned thinking, in my opinion. It just doesn't hold up. People participate in different contexts. That is life, and we need to enable that so that they do this safely and responsibly, without saying things that are simply unworkable, like have the one person stay in one team long, full time and long lived. That's not going to work. So that's the first example, Worldline. There are others in the pipeline, but we'll have to wait a little bit longer.
Cool, interesting. And now connecting my next question to this one by Enrico, how often have you seen or would you recommend this reteaming to happen?
It can be anywhere from once per year to several times per day. Whatever you want. So we have an example of Redgate Software, for example. They published on this several years ago already. They have an annual ritual of reteaming, where people choose to work on another team. So it is all voluntary, and on average, about 1/3 of people choose to work somewhere else. They do see that velocity dips a little bit for 2 weeks, but no customer notices this. And people love the opportunity of being able to work somewhere else, which is good for personal development, and so on. So the net benefit is high compared to the small drawback of a little bit of a hit on velocity for 2 weeks. In 1 year, that means nothing. On the other extreme, we have companies such as Tesla that does reteaming every 3 hours. You find videos of Joe Justice, who has worked there. He's a famous person in the Agile community. Tesla has people swarming in the factory every 3 hours towards the tasks that need to be done. So that means that every 3 hours, people work with a different sub team. So basically, the whole factory of 150 people or so is the team, and then they form sub teams with a cadence of every 3 hours to solve a problem with paint or a problem with the steering wheel or whatever, and that they go on fix. Joe explains that the rate of learning goes through the roof. You can imagine within a few weeks you've worked with everyone in the whole company. So it's mind blowing. It takes a toll on people, so not everyone can do this, but overall it works for Tesla. And then there are other options in between. There's a case study of Pipedrive on the unFIX website. They have temporary mission teams for new large features, you could say minimal marketable features, that they create mission teams around, and those last for a couple of weeks to a couple of months. So that sort of sits in between, you could say. And then they have a reteaming a process going on where people who have been on a mission team for a while go back to a maintenance team, and people who have been on a maintenance team for too long, they go on a mission team. So there's a continuous rotation between maintenance versus new product development, so that together the whole tribe is responsible for the entire code base, and every person needs to do both maintenance and new product development, but it allows them to focus on one thing for a couple of months or a couple of weeks. So there's lots of options, actually, and that's the whole point of the unFIX model. I'd like to show the options, and not tell people you should be in a cadence of 8 to 12 weeks with a PI planning at the start, and then iterations of every 1 to 2 weeks. That is a huge dependency that you're creating between the processes of all those teams. And we're talking about SAFe in this case, of course. Well, it could work for some organizations, but I would prefer to break it all apart and offer the different options as a menu, and then let people choose. And if they want to choose reteaming, and that is an if, you don't want to do it, fine. But if you want it, then there are ways to do this safely and responsibly, and then there should be a menu that helps people to figure out what fits their context.
So as you were talking, I was wondering, if you have an answer, what's the smallest company you've seen unFIX applied to, or what would you recommend as a minimum number of people, if any?
Well, my team is 6 and it works.
Sounds like a small team.
Yeah. So what we do, and that's an interesting case in itself, I think we're just 6 people. I mean, we're a startup. We are supposed to do everything, and we do everything as a team of 6. But still, we found it makes sense to divide up that huge backlog that consists of many different tasks, from finance to infrastructure to development to content creation, and you name it. It goes all over the place. To define the different value streams, like content creation is a value stream. But offering memberships to partners and trainers is another value stream, and then offer a few create a few platform areas, like legal and finance is a platform service to the rest of the organization. Same as infrastructure. So we created a picture for ourselves, like even if we're just 6 people, we can define the different value streams and the different platform areas. And then we simply do reteaming between them. So every area has a subset of people of 2, 3, sometimes 4 who say, I'd like to work on that. So we have 2 people or 3 who do the content, basically. The other 4 are not very interested in that. We have 2 people working on finance, but it's just a different combination out of those 6 people. So we've used the unFIX model to sort of divide up the backlog, and we now have different backlogs for different things. And it also makes it easier to create meetings because we're remote, and a meeting with 2 people is easier to set up than a meeting for 6 people all the time for everything that is going on. And we twice per week we have a full team meeting on Monday and on Thursday for an hour to discuss stuff that applies to everyone. But in between, we have these fast meetings for specific areas, whether it is memberships or for content or any of the other areas of our backlog. And we use the unFIX model to describe it. And it works for us. So there we have an example where it works for a startup, and we have a blog post out where it works for an enterprise of thousands of people. You decide where you want to begin.
Cool stuff. So let's go back to some questions that we have. Exactly, one of them is kind of linked to what I just asked, which is not on purpose, of course. Thanks, Beats. So when an organization is evolving from startup, it passes through different stages of cultural development. Should unFIX approach take this into consideration and be implemented accordingly?
Yes, I think so. Actually, I have taken the 10-stage model of the life cycle stages that I already offered as part of the Shift Up workshop 3-4 years ago. I have incorporated that into the unFIX model because I think it is a very crucial concept that explains that indeed or a business model or a value stream goes through these life cycle stages, and in the beginning the practices will be different from later on. First you focus on doing the right thing, and then later you try to do that thing right, or you change from exploration to execution gradually. That means that culture changes. That means that maybe the people have to change that are involved in that value stream over time, because some, like me, are very good in the exploratory stages and others are very good at execution. You shouldn't hire me for execution. I'm not so good at that. I lose interest when something is already working and it just needs to work better. Then no, I'm a creative person. I want to invent something new. So different people, the culture of the changes, and so that is in part of the pattern library of the unFIX model, the 10 life cycle stages. The conclusions that you want to draw from that, like, okay, we're in stage 3 versus another value stream is in stage 6. What does that mean for the practices that we apply? That we want to leave to you, but at least we have a starting point for the discussion.
Cool. So I guess this I remember the stages you mentioned during the Shift Up as well, and I think it kind of fits in what Bits was asking. If not, please write us another question. We are about to close for today. We have another question from Chris that I would show here, and then we have another last round because I have still a few more myself. So Chris, thanks again. Is it actually even possible to compare unFIX with SAFe? I guess it's part of also the article you shared today in some way. In my opinion, SAFe does focus processes and roles and does not tell anything about the structure or patterns that are employed.
Well, great question, Chris. I am working on that right now, actually, because I started out with a few structural patterns because I think that was not done well enough in other agile scaling frameworks, including SAFe. SAFe has the value stream teams and the art and the solution, but does not explain where we can find HR or marketing or and so on, though it is the most elaborate of the frameworks out there. So it has made a start. Indeed, SAFe tells you much more about processes. The unFIX model has no process information at this point, but I think we will get there at some point as well. So right now I'm in the process, pun not intended, of figuring out what else do we need to offer for someone to unfix SAFe, because I think SAFe is a toolbox of some really good ideas, but as a framework it fails because it is rigid. It uh, mandates that an organization is stuck in a cadence of 8 to 12 weeks with PI planning and IP and so on. And I think that's simply not good. I want to give people options. I want to unfix stuff, break it apart, offer the different options as a menu, as a palette. But right now we are not on par yet with what people would need to unfix SAFe. So that is my next challenge for the next few weeks and months. Actually, I have a meetup next week on this, next Thursday. SAFe Unfixed, it is called, just to show you what my thinking is so far and what we still need to do. Yeah, I will make sure that we get there as soon as possible, because you're not the only one who is interested in solving the problems that caused by that approach.
Cool stuff. So we are right in the middle of this work in process and constant evolution of the whole thing, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
Excellent. Cool. We have one more from Jimmy. What was one thing you learned with creating this that you hope everyone takes away? Thanks, Jimmy. Nice one.
Thank you for the question, Jim. I think that's a very important one. For me, it is about the experience. And I cannot repeat often enough, and I'm glad you asked this question, that ultimately it's the experience that counts, not the product, not the activities. And it is about the experience of the customers, the users, and the employees. And in that sense, some frameworks out there fail completely because people complain about how bad the experience of the framework itself is for them. And they told me that they feel they're stuck in a way of working that feels like a feature factory. Literally, I found sentences on the SAFe website that simply say that we produce features and measure how fast we can output features. Indeed, that turns you into a culture of what you could call a feature factory. That is not relevant. Customers are not interested in features, they are interested in their experience, the experience that they have with you as an organization. And I try to focus on that. And that is in itself why I try to make the unFIX model itself colorful with smileys in them, because I want it to be a better experience playing with this model than with some of the other very boring looking models out there. I think about this. I intentionally chose colors that make people feel like they're playing with Lego, because it needs the feeling needs to be like, this is something I can play with, not something that managers are mandating that we should use. Another example is there's workshops out there. I will not be the only one doing workshops. There are others already offering unFIX Foundation workshops, and intentionally, my team and I have said you can do unlimited number of workshops with just one license. So there's no fee per workshop, because if I do that, when there is a fee for every workshop that someone gives, then there is an incentive to make the model as complicated as possible so that people need more training. This you see in the Skilled Agile framework. It is so complicated that people need a lot of training just to understand what everything means. This is by design, because this is their business model, to make it as complicated as possible, so that people need more training, because that's how they earn their money. So I said to myself, I don't want to end up like that. The best way to do that is make sure that I do not earn money with more training. So that is not going to be the incentive. You can unlimited workshops with the one annual license, and we will make sure that we get our team members paid in another way. So, and that is experience too. It is experience of how the model is perceived, how people use it. It needs to be about play. It needs to be about case studies, and not about sitting in classrooms and then getting certificates.
And talking about sitting in classrooms, I take the opportunity to do the last question from my side. If folks from home or wherever they are want to ask more, we are going to be here for another 5-10 minutes. But with 2023, we're doing Jurgen's workshop in Milan. As I mentioned, Jurgen is doing other workshops throughout the year in other European cities. Is it only Europe so far that you're doing?
So far, only Europe. Yes.
So far, only Europe. So I'll drop the link here. But my question is, after all these years of trying to make it work online, how will it work in person? I remember a lot of playing, a lot of cards, as I said, and as you mentioned. So what can we expect from your workshop that, as I mentioned, is next month in Milan, but there's more in Jurgen's website that I already pointed to before in the chat, because there's plenty of useful resources.
Yeah, so what we will be doing is a lot of games, exercises. I bring a whole suitcase full of cards, colorful cards, and turns out people love working with cards. I learned that with my management DLO classes, to be honest. Moving motivators and delegation poker and the other physical exercises work very well. So I thought, when I do a new workshop, I want a lot of cards on the table and just have people play and have discussions and come up with a couple of exercises and games to play. Yeah, that's is going to be very very interactive workshop, and I look forward to doing that in Milan. As I said, there's an earlier one in Stockholm, also in Budapest. There is one, and one per month, not more. That's all I can manage for now, and I hope to see some people there.
Absolutely. Actually, now that we started talking about this, I remember another important question that I wanted to ask, but we are still in that 5-10 minutes frame. In the meantime, keep asking questions in the YouTube chat if you wish. So, of course, we spoke about the model in general, so the pattern library. What I was wondering is what type of people would actually benefit from this as a public workshop, as in, would this need to be like some people who can make decisions in a team, or would it be suitable for anyone regardless?
Well, it is mostly beneficial for people who are influencers in the organization when it comes to the organizational structure and the ways of working. Any random team member might find it an interesting workshop, but they might be disappointed, thinking, okay, well, this is all cool, but I have no voice in the organization. I cannot change anything. And that might be frustrating. You would probably be better served with a role as an HR person or a middle manager or a product owner or a consultant, business consultants who are influential, who can actually convince managers to make changes to the organization that are necessary. So the change makers, as I sometimes call them, those will benefit most, I think.
Awesome. I would say that is it. Thanks a lot, Jurgen. It's been
Thank you, too.
really, really cool and interesting to get a sneak peek into what we are going to expect at your workshop and your work. Last. Will this become a book as well? Super preview.
There will definitely be a book, but I am writing a novel right now, and I promise to do only one book at a time.
Makes sense.
So first finish this one, then work on unFIX book, and that's good because that would allow the unFIX model to evolve a bit more before I start writing about it.
Makes sense. It's best to have the plan to start and finish it. It makes absolute sense. Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone for being with us, and to the next one.
Thanks.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.